Hello, everybody. Welcome into the August 2024 edition of Carallel's Caregiver Conversation series. Glad you could be with us today. Matt Perrin, Director of Caregiver Engagement, back in the saddle here today. And I'm joined by my colleague and friend, Sheila Schultz. Hey, Sheila, how are you?
Hey, Matt.
What's going on?
It's a beautiful day in North Carolina.
All right. Well, we got some good weather here in New Hampshire today too. So, and I hope that's the same for any of the attendees wherever you are in the country. We're here today, Sheila, to talk about preventative care. Something in the early days of my caregiving experience, I probably would have rolled my eyes at. But hindsight is 2020, and it's a sneaky important topic. So psyched to be talking about it today, and really glad you're alongside. If anybody's joining one of these sessions for the first time, welcome. Glad you're here. We are Carallel. We're a caregiver support company. Our mission each and every day is to make caregiving easier, plain and simple. And we do that in two different ways. With one-on-one dedicated support over the phone, email, and chat with our team of care advocates, of which Sheila is a part. And we complement that one-on-one support with our digital experience, which I think of as having a caregiving expert in your pocket, is kind of how I think about that. So, it's a digital experience chock full of resources, articles, videos, tools that you can use, ways for you to store documents, things like that. So the combination of our digital experience and our one-on-one support over the phone is how we hop in the trenches each day to make caregiving easier for people who are caring for somebody that they love all over the country. And we do that, we make our service available through health insurance plans, employers, health systems around the country. So if you're not sure whether you have access, ask your health plan, your employer, your health system, etc. So that's housekeeping item number one. Number two, conversations by design. If you've been to one of these sessions, you're sick of hearing me say that, but we really, really mean it. So I play the role of broken record each and every time we get on the call and mention that, because we really would love to hear from you. There's not going to be any slides here. This is just some real talk on something that is, like I said, a sneaky important topic for us as caregivers, and also for the people that we're caring for. So did I miss anything, Sheila,
I think
on the
you've got it.
housekeeping? All right, so I'm getting it down to like 2.5 minutes. We're making progress here. But let's jump in. And per usual, Sheila, we want to be super practical in these conversations. So today I thought, as it relates to this topic, what that means to me, hopefully you agree, but what that means to me is we're going to talk a little bit, let's do some level setting on what preventative care is, what we're meaning when we say that, who preventative care is for, and touch on, of course, why it's important. Then we're going to jump right into some things that anybody can be doing today to sort of get themselves on top of their preventative care. And then the last but not least, we're going to talk about some added benefits that I certainly, when I was caregiving, I wouldn't have equated to preventative care. And actually, this is my favorite. That's my favorite part of this discussion, because, well, I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to give it away. But so let's hop in, Sheila. Can you just level set for the audience here? Like, what is preventative care?
I like to think of it really simply. It's proactive steps that anyone can take to help detect or prevent any serious medical problems before they get worse. So it's proactive, it's steps, and it helps us to get ahead of things before they get worse.
Got it. Okay. And I guess so, and it could so when I think of preventative care, I have pretty myopic view. I think of like going to get my annual checkup, and that's it. But it's more than that, if I'm understanding what you're saying, right? Like it's a much broader sort of concept in terms of its importance, but also its benefits. Again, for us as family caregivers, but also for the people that we're helping. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it goes beyond the scope of what you would think of as healthcare, because I think as we have changed as a society, we're learning more about what we can be doing. So it's sort of a collaborative effort, and I think it entails a lot more people than we used to think of it as. So
Hmm.
let's dive in and find some of those.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I have a couple, like, I guess, confessions. I don't know if that's the right word, but and I think I think other caregivers maybe uh feel this way, or sort of have a relationship with preventative care like I had, which was uh there's a couple different dimensions to it when I was caring for my mom. One for myself, you know, I have like white coat syndrome, I guess, or like I'm just
Mhm.
afraid of, I never loved going to the doctor, so that was a thing. Um, the but I guess the bigger thing when I was caregiving was it was just so easy. Like I just shoved it immediately to the back burner. It was
Yeah,
almost like I already had this thing in me that was like I don't love going to the doctor for whatever reason. Um, but then when I started caring for my mom, my responsibilities, I had this whole new set of responsibilities, and it was just so easy for me to put it on the back burner. Um, and then similarly, but with my mom, when she was living with dementia, um, there was like it was almost there was part of me, like a small part of me, I guess, in there that I was only really concerned with care related to her dementia, which is totally not right. I was like anything else,
yeah,
like, because it just became so hard to be like, okay, how many I have to get my mom to the doctor or the dentist just for this thing unrelated to, you know, the
right.
elephant in the room, which was her dementia and the impact that it was having on her life. So what I guess what would you say if I were a new caregiver? Like, what would you say to me or someone who kind of feels similarly about preventative care?
Well, I think you touched on some really common points that people have, and I think there's two things. One is you weren't really thrilled about going to the doctor anyway. The second thing is now you have this really great excuse because you're a caregiver and you're this is all consuming, right? Or at least in our heads. So it's a really great excuse to not do the thing we wanted to do or people tell us to do.
Right.
But I'd like to get sort of, as people are thinking about it, get to the root cause of why you don't want to go. Sometimes it could be fear of bad news.
Mhm.
It could be embarrassment about a symptom and you're not feeling, real comfortable with your doctor. I think for some populations, there's this fear of being perceived as weak if you're sick.
Mhm.
And then honestly, for a lot of people that I've talked to, there's a certain level of overconfidence and like sort of misplaced confidence about, well, I'm naturally healthier than most people, so I don't really need to go. That's for people who don't, who are weak or, tend to get sick. So I
Mhm.
think there's to really be honest about what that reason is, and then you could sort of step into what to do about it. But
Mhm.
I think for some of those reasons, you might take someone with you to the doctor. You might think about making sure that you schedule it at a good time of week so you have no excuses. Get someone else in to help you, in your caregiving role. And then mentally prepare, maybe ask questions. So give yourself a chore to do rather than just sit there
Mhm.
as like a victim of being examined or things like that. So there's a lot of different ways you could approach it.
I love that. I love, yeah, I like that last piece on sort of whether it's notes or questions or some combination of thereof. But just what I'm hearing when you say that is like give yourself something, ideally something that's productive or beneficial to be thinking about instead of thinking about, in my case, my dread of going, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And
yeah.
it's yeah, okay. I like that. I like that. Okay. So very helpful. Thank you for laying the foundation um on what this thing is, what preventative care is in the context of this discussion. And I really appreciate you indulging me in my my confession there. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm not the only person that sort of feels that way.
Not at
Um,
all. Not at all.
but okay, so let's sort of now shift and talk about some some things that we can be doing as caregivers to sort of, if we're not on track, get ourselves back on track.
Right.
Um, but I would just love to caveat that by saying there is, so this was actually a random source of guilt for me when I was caregiving. Like there was, or maybe even some shame. Like I knew I should be doing it. I wasn't doing it. I was kind of happy I wasn't doing it. Then I would feel some guilt or shame for not doing
I
it.
hear
Right.
you. I
So,
do.
um, so caveat is like, we don't have, the expectation isn't, somebody who might be off track on their preventative care, like we snap our fingers and then, yeah, we're all good. We're perfect. So like any little thing you can do to take, one step or a half a step is great.
You
But
bet.
these are some example, or these are some, in our opinion, some good things that we could do to take a step, half step, whatever it is. So,
Right.
does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, always. We're always talking about taking small steps and especially with caregivers who have such a full day to not look at it as some big, huge thing. I've got to do all of these things. You just take one thing at a time and chip away.
Yeah. Okay. Love it. So let's do that. One plug, or just reiteration to the audience. If you have questions or comments, the chat function should be enabled. You can drop anything you'd like to share into the chat. You'll see the little chat icon down at the bottom of your Zoom console. And we'll address whatever we can live, of course, and anything that we're not able to address, we'll be sure to follow up after the session. But so the first, if we're thinking about things we can be doing to sort of get ourselves on track with preventive care, the first thing that came to mind was like schedule screenings for
Sure.
common conditions or diseases. You get to a certain age, there are certain screenings that are recommended.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, that would seem to me to be a good way a good thing we could do to check something off the list and help us feel good about like the fact that we're making progress here.
Yeah, I think screenings are one of those things that, fall into that category that we think, oh, we don't need to do that, mainly because they're for people who don't feel sick. You don't
Hmm.
have any symptoms, you think everything's fine. So it's not an urgency in your mind. But these are for things that do pop up and can sneak up on you with lifestyle choices or hereditary issues. And these are things like kidney disease or diabetes or heart disease. And these are things that can be really easily treated or prevented if you go to get those screens early. And once again, it's something that you have to put on your calendar because you don't feel like you need to go to the doctor, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and that would include like um, cancer screenings and
Yeah.
just any screenings, depending on, well, just any uh, taking action on any recommended screenings, I guess would be the
Yeah. And if
headline of this, right?
Right. And if you have a relationship with your doctor already, he or she knows your history and your family history and will recommend what's right for you, for your age, for your any conditions or any situations that he or she thinks is good for you. So
Hmm.
it's good to start that relationship and have them get to know you.
Right. So uh, that all makes sense. I guess going one level down, and we're getting tactical here, but as I'm prone to do, insert my own personal experience into these conversations. And so I am of an age where I have a couple of screenings that are because of my age and family history, a number of reasons they're recommended for me. Uh, One of them has been just so difficult to get scheduled. Um,
Mm,
and particularly when I'm not in I don't have I wouldn't say I have the best relationship with my primary care. But it's not that it's a bad relationship. We just don't have much of a relationship, just to
right,
clarify
right.
there.
That's
But
probably pretty common, honestly.
yeah, but I think that actually has been a contributing factor to the fact that it's taken me 6 months to
Mm,
get on the calendar for one particular screening.
yeah.
So are there, I know a lot of what we do, well, I should say what you do and our other care advocates, um, is sort of coaching around talking with the doctor, communicating with the doctor. I mean, are there
Mhm.
any tips that we could offer people so that they're not sort of in a cycle like I've been in for the last few months with this screening that I'm talking about?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, one is it's really tough right now. I think ever since COVID, honestly, I think that getting appointments has been hard. And I don't know whether it's a lack of staffing or whatever the reason. So as far as that issue, to me, all you can do is make the appointment and get on a wait list and
Right.
see if anybody else cancels. I tend to find people who around this time of year when kids are going back to school, a lot of people cancel. So of
Mhm.
course, if you're one of those parents who are getting kids back to school, then you wouldn't be able to go in. But that's one thing. And then I think also as far as building a relationship, when you're in the doctor's office, bring
Mhm.
something else to the appointment other than sitting there and being passive and letting the doctor go through the list of things. Like I said, you can prepare questions.
Mhm.
What if? How about this? And then also insert something else. Like, you could talk about your lifestyle or ask questions that are a little bit more, less healthcare, appointment related, if that makes any sense. Like, hey, what do
Mhm.
you do for fun? Or I like to play tennis. And it sort of it starts a relationship like you would with anybody else.
Mhm. I
So
really, yeah, and note to self that I should be making a little bit more of an effort on that front. But what I heard from you there, the relationship and like the communication slash relationship building is again another sort of pervasive topic, I guess, or thread that's woven through a lot of different topics that we talk about. Um, but then what I guess two other things that I heard there. One was the acknowledgement that just stuff takes time given where
right,
we are
right.
as a society right now after the pandemic. Um, but then calling, getting on the list is sort of, for the purposes of our discussion here, which is really around if we're off track, getting back on track for preventative care, like we've accomplished the goal, right? If
Right.
we know we're overdue for screening, go ahead and make that call, get on the schedule, even if it's for 6 months in advance, right?
Yeah. Because if you
Yeah.
wait another month, then you'll be
Yeah.
another month out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so vaccinations, I would imagine, would be similar to screenings. Like that could be another opportunity, right?
Yeah, and you have to you can prioritize these according to what works for you. It's really
Hmm.
about taking a look at what you can chip away at and what you are willing to. So, if the health screenings is one thing, and immunizations or vaccinations fit into another category in your mind, and one is easier than the other, just pick one and go
Hmm.
for it. Things like the flu, and sometimes people don't realize how, as we age, it's more likely to have serious implications. To get the flu could lead to pneumonia. And it's not just like this vague idea, but there's statistics that talk about, if it goes from the flu to pneumonia, you're going to end up in the hospital, and nobody wants to do that.
Hmm.
It's like thinking it through. And I'm not really specifically speaking of the flu only, but understand that as we age, things change. And like I was saying earlier, we're not as strong as we used to be, and sort of reconciling that, and then making these concessions and saying, I'm going to make this appointment. It's going to be okay. It's a quick shot, and it's really for my health and well-being. And something we didn't mention is peace of mind for your family.
Hmm. Yeah.
You've got a whole family who's concerned about you too. So
Right. The ding, ding, ding. That's my main motivation to, with,
yeah,
young kids. But um,
that.
okay. So screenings, vaccinations. So let's talk a little bit about lifestyle choices,
Mhm.
because this is something, and so a couple of things that I really want to draw out that I know I hear you talk about a lot. Um, so, diet, kind of obvious lifestyle choice, but exercise, things like activity level or exercise frequency of exercise, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I would imagine your sort of start small ethos would apply here, right? Like if
Yeah,
you're someone who, for whatever reason, doesn't exercise today, the expectation wouldn't be, uh, tomorrow you're going to run 3 miles and every day after that, right?
right.
You talk a little bit about how lifestyle, how these sort of choices play into preventative care.
Well, I really like the use of words that are easy for people. So I don't want to say diet and exercise. I want to say eating and moving, I
Yeah,
want to
right.
make it super simple. And we all eat and we all move, and let's just be conscientious about those things. Sleep is another thing, quality sleep. Um, so I always really try to encourage, okay, so movement. What does movement mean? Anything from walking to dancing. I mean, you can turn the radio on in the morning or your phone on and listen to a song you like and move a little bit faster than you normally would. Call it dancing, call it whatever you want. That is movement that is going to be helpful. It could be, then of course you could go to classes or do things, but you could also turn your TV on or get on your computer, and there's all kinds of things to look at and listen to, and chair exercises and Tai Chi, and if you like that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
really, movement, walk out on your patio, just do a little bit more than the same routine. Same thing with eating. I don't really like to talk about dieting. I feel like it's almost taboo for people. And
Mhm.
we've discussed this before, but I like to say add one thing rather than worrying about what to take out. So add something that's nutritious, and then it's checked off your list for the day. Have something that's a whole food, either a fruit or a vegetable or something that doesn't come in a package. And then you're done. And then
Mhm.
work on things like sleep and taking those little brain breaks that we often talk about, getting quiet time alone. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of different ways that you can really be benefiting your health in the long run with tiny, tiny steps.
Right. And I can't love that concept anymore, because for me it makes it, because yeah, when I hear the word diet, I tune out
Hmm.
automatically. If I hear the word like workout or exercise, like tune out. And
Right.
like, so I just love the way you're first of all, the sort of, I guess you referred to it as like a simple approach, but it makes it seem achievable that way. With the eating example, it just being such a perfect bullseye for me anyway. Like it's so much easier for me to say, okay, I'm going to try this green thing
Right.
instead of saying, well, no, I don't want to give up whatever it is that whatever it, you know,
Right.
French fry or whatever.
Right.
So I just love the idea of like changing that like flipping the paradigm a little bit, add that one thing. But
Mhm.
woven through everything you were talking about was small steps,
Mhm.
which just, I mean, you've converted me on this, and it's just it because it's the difference between, in my opinion, the like making a change that potentially could be sustainable
Yeah, it's getting it
and
done.
not, right? And the other thing I love that what you said was like, look, don't, I kind of similar to you, how you don't like talking about uh diet and exercise. Like I almost could put lifestyle in that category of words, right? For the same thing.
Right.
Because like, no, I want to change one thing. I want to add one thing today. I'll worry about tomorrow. Especially in the caregiving context, like when a lot of times you're so in the weeds as a caregiver and everything else you have in your life that you can barely see the finish line to that day, right?
Right.
Um, so anyway, just a few pieces, a few of the things that resonated in that little, in your points there. Um,
Good.
uh, and then the last piece is preventing injuries.
Mm.
Um, so some of what we were just talking about goes into, um, goes into this, right? But
Mhm.
you know, if we're moving more, we're gonna, regardless of how we're thinking about it, we're conceivably going to get ourselves in, going to be getting ourselves in a little bit better shape.
Yep.
But preventing injuries would sort of, you know, could be everything from getting a home safety evaluation,
Hmm.
you know, from, you know, asking your doctor for a recommendation of a physical therapist or an occupational therapist who can evaluate the home, to like some specific maybe things that you could do to work on strength or balance,
Hmm.
stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
strength and balance are going to improve if you're moving more.
Right.
I definitely agree with the home safety. Things we often don't think about is, do you have enough lighting? I mean, honestly, that's one of the biggest things for me. And then also making sure you are up to date on getting your hearing and vision checked. That's big, big
Mhm.
things that you can make big steps with small approaches to make sure that you're hearing well and you're seeing well and the house is lit and you're strong and you're balanced. I mean, that is the way to prevent injuries.
Yeah, I love it. And these are things that, first of all, this what we're talking about right here has been, could be an entirely different conversation, and has been in this series. We've done sessions on home safety in general, that where we go into detail about exactly what we're talking about. But in the context of sort of, if somebody maybe isn't necessarily on track with their preventative care, these are some things that you could, like, if today you just say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make an appointment. I'm going to call, I'm going to make an appointment for X screening or Y screening, or I'm going to turn some music on, as you said, Sheila, and move a little bit more today than I did yesterday. Like,
Yeah,
those are positive steps in the right direction, which is
absolutely.
our main, what we wanted for our main takeaway. In addition to this last piece, which in my perspective is the most important. Well, I mean, our health and well-being, nothing's more important than that. So maybe a little hyperbole there, but like, I I just I craved a sense of control and not
Yeah.
feeling failure when I was caregiving. Like,
Mm,
um, and I wasn't a failure. I did the best I could. But like, if you're a caregiver, like you've experienced that, like, man, I didn't get anything accomplished today, or that
right.
didn't go, like, just that the ongoing lack of, perceived lack of control, because there's so much out of our control when we're caregiving.
Yeah.
But doing these things is a way to give ourselves a little bit of a feeling of control and accomplishment.
Yeah.
Because if you call today and make that appointment in the example I was just giving, like, that's an accomplishment worth celebrating
Yeah.
for you that day as a caregiver. And you're also, in doing so, taking control of something that, of you, period. You're taking control of something, which is great. Another thing to be
Right.
celebrated, right? So,
Right.
um, that's the last, this is my favorite part about this whole, uh,
Yeah.
this whole concept.
Yeah. And
Um,
just a couple last pieces on this is that, a sense of purpose in life is linked to
yes,
better health.
right.
Increase in energy and productivity is better health. And what a lot of people don't think about is good physical health leads to good mental health. So it's making you
Yeah.
feel confident, it's making you feel like you've achieved something. It's doing so many things for us. And then on the side, reducing our risk of chronic illness. So
Yeah, I love it. And we just got a high five from the crowd, um, on this piece. But you know, this is, so there's a lot of reasons, and we're over time. We'll end in just 1 minute here, but there are a lot of reasons that we should be prioritizing as caregivers, preventative care.
mhm,
Um, and so that there's no getting around that. But this last thing that we're talking about here around, it has this dual benefit for us as caregivers, which
mhm,
is, which is getting at sense of purpose, as you put it, Sheila. But just, it's a little small way for us to get that little, get a little feeling of control. Like, yeah, I have that, I did that, and
right.
feeling of accomplishment, which is, in my opinion, worth its weight in gold, particularly when you're so deep in the weeds of caregiving.
Mhm.
So time flies when we're having fun.
Mhm.
So glad, Sheila, that you joined me. So glad that everybody could be here today. I just pasted in the chat the our caregiver conversation page on carallel.com. The schedule, the upcoming schedule is there. We'll do this again in September. But also there are replays of past sessions. So you'll see Sheila and I's face quite a bit on that page. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, but that's the
I hear
that's
you.
the situation. And Sheila, any final last thoughts for the group?
Baby steps,
Yeah,
pick up the phone, make one appointment, eat one piece of healthy food, step outside the door and look at the sunshine. Do little things that will add up to a lot of big results.
love it. And if I tried to add anything to that, I'd just sully it. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you, Sheila, for joining us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everybody for being here. We'll see you towards the end of September. Okay,
Bye,
bye now.
everyone.